All right, I got 6:30 on the clock. I'd like to open the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for the Town of Washington for March 17th, 2026. We have 4 board members and our alternate, Alex, will be stepping in. First matter on the agenda is to review or approve the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Does anybody have any changes, omissions, recommendations, nothing? I would make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, the next thing and only thing on our agenda is the appeal concerning the Yadgard Pool. Since our last meeting, we received a new landscaping plan from Mr. Yadgard's counsel. So we'll accept that into the record. We also received an email from our building inspector dated March 17th, 2026, regarding the new screening plan. We also received a letter from Alan Rapelier as counsel for the Cornells, the next door neighbors. His letter is dated March 17th, 2026, and we'll accept that into the record as well. My understanding was we continued the public hearing over to tonight, so I would make a motion that we reopen the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody wish to speak for or against the application? Your appeal, Mr. Rapelier, you want to go?
Yes, I think there's also a letter from Mr. Romanowski that Demarest did share with me.
I don't seem to have it. I've got a landscaping plan.
March 10th?
He just shared it. He sent it to me, Will sent it to me Thursday or Friday, so.
Did you get anything, Kyle?
I'm looking.
I don't remember seeing anything.
And this would have been March.
Well, he can speak to it, I'm just, in fairness to him, I'm trying.
Yeah, well, we complete record.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can locate it before we start out.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks. March 10th.
3.
I have extra copies if you, it wasn't that.
You have extra copies?
Tuesday.
2, actually.
All right.
Here, actually, print that, sorry. There's 3. I can-
Oh, those are your letters. I've got
Yeah,
those.
I don't know if anybody else has them though, but if you,
I have it as a document.
I see,
anybody needs.
You have the March 10th letter?
March 10th? I got the one from today.
Yeah, I have the one from today, but
I
I
have the
don't
one
have...
from today.
So it was sent to, we did get a letter, it looks like it was carbon to Christine.
Oh, to
It
town
also
clerk.
says ZBA secretary. That's you, right?
Yep.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, March 10th. Let me
Last
forward
week.
to, Frank, I'm going to forward it to you, and then if you want to.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, thank you. May I just see what Jonathan wrote? I haven't seen it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Realize that you folks I didn't see what I wrote. Hopefully you'll have a chance to read it. After the last meeting, I did go over, I've been to the property before, but I really didn't, I wanted to see which trees were planted. There are 18 very large trees that were planted by the Cornells, all on their side. I was able to get, there was a lot of snow on the ground still, but I was able to get behind that. I did not go on Mr. Yadgard's property and be able to kind of see the 2 sheds. One of the things I point out in my letter is it was helpful to visit because the Cornell house sits a little bit lower than those sheds. I didn't try to measure it, I couldn't measure it with the snow, but in any event, I think that's important, and I'll explain why. With the letter to begin with, there's several exhibits, but I think what I'd like to do is start with the very last one, just to eliminate this issue, is that you obviously haven't seen Mr. Romanowski's letter of March 10th, But one of the things that he put in his letter was an expression that the Cornell's generator apparently, in his mind, had a problem because he wasn't able to evaluate publicly available records. I came up to Town Hall on Monday to see if the ZBA records are online beginning in 2020. Apparently before then, there's no real organizational system for, talk to Jonathan's, the woman that sits with Jonathan, I don't know her name, but,
That's me.
oh yeah, that's you, yeah, sorry. Anyhow, she remembers, it's hard to find stuff pre-2020.
Because
But
there was computer changes at that time.
in any event, to eliminate an issue that was raised, I guess to say the Cornells are doing something wrong, what I've given you is the letter from the town when they closed on the property in 2021, that there are no violations on their property, and the certificate of compliance issued by Tom Fiore for the generator to Tara Kelly in 2018. That's who they bought the house from. So the Cornells didn't put a generator in. The generator was there before. Everything, as far as we know, is code compliant with town law. And that's, I've given you the no violations letter, and I've given you the certificate of compliance for the generator. And the reason I give you those is because it's been alleged that perhaps the Cornells have done something in this. They have not.
So this stuff pertains to Cornell's property.
You didn't see the letter yet, Frank, but it's alleged that there's something wrong with the Cornell property. Okay? Or it's also alleged that they, well, I'll let counsel speak for himself. The next thing I'd like you to take a moment to look at is the next exhibit, which is Exhibit 3, which is actually minutes of a zoning board meeting from 2022. So, Frank was the only one still here then, and the reason these are relevant is, sorry, Alex.
Same one, with that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, how this all started was the Yadgards obtained a variance, neighbors were not notified. I don't fault the Yadgards for that, I think it was just a mistake. So variances were ultimately granted, but it was without notice to the neighbors. But the zoning board talked about variances for pool equipment, and the pool equipment being on a pad. And it even, at some point, Mr. Yadgard talks about maybe he can put it in the building. And what happened at that meeting, it's pretty good, is that the board unequivocally concluded that you need variances for pool equipment. And when they came in originally for the variance, it was only for a pool. And on the second page, John Parisi said that Mr. Yadgard is really looking for 4 variances, which include the pool equipment. That the pool equipment would require a side yard setback and a backyard setback variance. Mr. Yadgard asked if he could put the pool equipment in a pre-existing shed on the property. Mr. Werner replied that it would probably be a question for the building department. We talked a little bit about the shed, some details. Frank certainly spoke. But what came out of this meeting, in my opinion, is that they talked about a pad. It's something you need to put pool equipment on, and that the pad needs a variance. I can't tell from these minutes where it was then being proposed, but it was not being proposed along the side of the house. Fletcher Coddington, at some point, said, why don't you move them closer? Let me just see here. Chairman Parisi asked Mr. Yadgard why the planned fence is not closer to the pool. Mr. Yadgard replied that he had the shed that will house the pool equipment close by. He is trying to confine everything to one area. So I misspoke. I think they were talking about putting it in the shed at the time. And the board clearly said you need side yard and rear yard variances. The next application that Mr. Yadgard made was to put it along the side of his house. And part of the reason is that Mr. Coddington, Fletcher Coddington, was talking about moving it away from the neighbor. So, I have these minutes in my file from the very beginning of this, but I had forgotten about them. But if you have a chance, please study them, because it looks like we've already dealt with this issue before. And,
Hey, Alan, did you say what the date of that meeting was?
yes, Kyle,
11/15/22.
Thanks.
yeah, and it's Exhibit 3, Kyle, to the letter that I sent.
Your, the March 17th letter.
Yes, correct.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to see where, yeah, I mean, John was unequivocal about what it would need. Now, the other exhibits which I thought would be helpful as you think about this is, Exhibit 2 is parcel access has got a pretty neat measuring tool. And what I did was, I measured from the corner of the shed to the Cornell's living room. That's 59 feet. Then the other corner to the closest point of the Yadgard house, which is 114 feet. So it's about twice the distance. Exhibit 1, which I also gave you, shows that most of the time, it's AI, so I tried to check it, it looked correct, that the prevailing wind in that area is a north and west wind, which means the Cornell's house, which is downgrade, lower elevationally, and double, you know, it's closer to the Cornell's house by double than it is to the Yadgard's house is. The Cornells are going to get the noise and the exhaust in a much more impactful way than the Yadgards will. And I don't want anybody to have to suffer them. They should just be moved away from where they are now. And these measuring tools, you can use them on parcel access. Exhibit 1 is, as I said, if you look up prevailing winds, I always frankly thought our prevailing wind in Millbrook was a north wind. It seems to be north-northwest. In the letter, what I've stressed to the board is, tried to stress to the board is, this is clearly a structure based on our code. Even if a shed doesn't require a building permit, which I don't think that this shed qualifies in that way. I think the shed that the code is talking about is one that's to be used in connection with a home and a residence. But even if it didn't require a building permit, it does require variances, because you are placing a structure closer than our setbacks permit. In this case, both along the back and along the side. And I think the board already discussed that 4 years ago. Well, 3.5 years ago. I thought about also the attachment is, no more details have been provided to the board. When we closed the last meeting, I'm quite sure the board asked for information about mechanicals, how it would impact, where it would be vented. I don't think any more information has come. If you go and look at that building, there's 2 sheds. One's much bigger. It's closer to the Cornells. Then there's a smaller one. They appear to have wooden floors. I didn't go in them. I didn't go on the Yadgard property. I think they do. But in any event, that's attached to something that's attached to the ground. So our definition of structure, these are structures. And if you, I don't think there's any debate in the board, is if there was no roof above them, if the Yadgards came in and said, forget the sheds, we want to put the equipment right there, it would require 2 variances, side yard, rear yard, no question about it, because a pad is going down, structures are going on the pad. That's not eliminated by putting a roof over it, and there's nothing in our code that says it is. And if someone says, well, but it's a permissible shed, there's nothing in our code that says if it's a shed, a permissible shed that maybe doesn't require a building permit, is somehow no longer requires variances. Our code doesn't say that. Our code has a special provision, frankly, for a household shed that you're going to keep your kids' bikes in, or you're going to keep your lawnmower, something movable equipment. This is very different. This is an existing structure, which is probably used for those purposes now, which is why it's permitted, that is supposedly going to be made into a mechanicals room. And you can't put it any closer to the Cornell's property, and that what's being proposed is to put it closer by putting it within something. If you took that roof off, there'd be no debate. This needs a variance. It needs 2 variances. Putting it in something that has a roof on it doesn't vitiate that requirement, and there's really nothing in our code that says that. So I've tried to also show to the board the environmental concerns, meaning one of the board members raised, what about smell, what about noise? Why would you put these things there when you can put them over in your yard, way away from a neighbor? It's just not, it's not appropriate, it's also not lawful. When I was here last, I brought the code sections with me, and again, to maybe remind the board, if you look at what storage shed is, it's a residential building for the use of household items in connection with a residence. It doesn't say anything about pools. But even if it's a storage shed, that just, you may not need a building permit, but you need variances. Now, when you modify that shed, which is going to happen, you're going to cut holes in it, it requires a building permit. And it's clearly a structure reading our code, and I don't think there's any debate. When the ZBA was talking about this all those years ago, we weren't at the meeting, so to be frank, I didn't remember it. When I pulled the minutes out today, lo and behold, that's what I found. So, for all of those reasons, there has been progress on the plantings. It's helpful to see those. I would prefer they be more precise, and the reason for that is the last 2 pages of the planting plan are not very precise. They talk about species, they don't talk about heights or sizes, they talk about a range. The reason the precision is important is because if there's a grievance or a claim that something's wrong, Jonathan has something he can look at and say, no, they did it right, or no, they didn't do it right. So having seen Jonathan's email of today, he says, I approve the planting plan. Well, the planting plan has variances for what's going to be planted, and it doesn't talk at all about sizes. And if, by the way, you go to the site and you stand, which you're all welcome to do if you want to go on the Cornell property, and you stand on the boundary, if you look at the 2 trees closest to those sheds, those are not those trees. It looks like they fully screened. They're spindly little deciduous trees. They're not full green trees at all. If you look at the 2 trees closest to the shed, and I have videos on my phone from when I went to the site, that plan shows a full green deciduous tree. That is not, I'm sorry, evergreen. That is not there. There are, at best, a very spindly pine or something. But the plan, as it shows right next to those sheds, those 2 trees are not there. Not in the form that they're shown on that plan. Does the board have any questions?
The screening plan that we originally were talking about, I think back in the resolution, was screening of the pool, not the sheds.
I agree. The reason I'm pointing that out, Frank, is you're looking at a plan that makes it look like you can't see a thing. That's not what's there.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Anybody else?
No.
Just to clarify, what, if you don't mind, Alan, what precisely 2 variances do you think are required? You mentioned, you said
Sure.
there's at least 2, or there are 2, not at least 2.
If the,
So I just want to make sure my notes are.
sure. So Kyle, the shed that's there now, I obviously don't know exactly where this stuff is going in the shed, but
Right.
that's within the rear yard and the side yard. It's very close to the rear boundary.
So there are 2 side, yard setbacks in the rear and side.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have a chance, Kyle, and you look at one of these exhibits, for example, it's where I do the measurements.
Yeah.
Here's the shed,
Yeah.
here's the rear yard, right? Here's the side yard.
Okay.
All right?
Got it.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. All right, public hearing still open. Anybody else like to come in comments?
Yes, please.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. William Demarest, Park Fallscraft. I'm here representing Yadgards. We did submit a March 10th, 2026 letter. I think my comments will cover what's in the letter. I have one copy. You guys have always had copies for
We'll keep
everything.
it for the record, yeah.
Of course, the one time I don't bring extra copies is the one time. But I think everything I'll say to you now should cover pretty much what's
Okay.
in there. So first off, we would ask the board hopefully to make a decision tonight. This has been a very long process for the Yadgards over a pool and some plantings. And I want to emphasize that the Yadgards have tried to accommodate concerns and address issues and concerns with the code compliance throughout the process. They sought the variances that they were advised were required initially in 2022. It was brought up that another variance might be required. We actually, right now, don't recall whether at that moment in time the equipment was proposed for in the shed or not. The minutes are confusing because there is a reference to potentially being in the shed, but then there's a conversation later about, can I move the equipment into the shed? And at that point in time, there was a statement that that's a question for the building department, and that's essentially what gets us here today, is that question was ultimately presented to the building department, and building zoning administrator said, it's fine, you don't need a variance to put it there, and that's why we're here. I think those minutes demonstrate that it was raised by a board member to move the equipment to the side of the house. So that's what the Yadgards did, because that was addressing a concern raised by the board. Ultimately, the Cornells objected to that location, and it was removed from the side of the house. Again, at that ZBA meeting, it was commented that, there's a discussion about putting this into the shed, and there was no further discussion at that point. There were discussions with the building department about that. Informally was advised could do that and wouldn't need a variance, so that's what was put in. That's what the building permit was obtained. That's what gets us here. We're not trying to skirt anything. We're trying to comply and do what makes sense here. The Yadgards have downsized the pool to address concerns. They moved the equipment when concerns are raised. I think what we're going through with this plan for the fence and the plantings is demonstrative of the Yadgards' good faith in trying to address concerns here. Requirement for the fence and plantings to screen the view. Opaque fence was proposed that would have completely blocked the view, and objection was made to that. Okay, we'll move the fence into the property. We'll change it. It won't be the opaque eyesore that as far as the Cornells felt, and we'll add plantings. That wasn't enough. We've added more plantings. That still wasn't enough. You have the most recent version. The building inspector has repeatedly confirmed that the zoning administrator feels that's going to block the view from the neighboring property, most recently stating that the current plan with the existing natural screening and the proposed addition will beyond sufficiently screen from the neighboring property. We think there's plenty there to uphold that reasonable determination. The pool equipment in the shed, first, as raised in our letter, we think the challenge to that, this was not the original basis for the challenge either initially. When this came in, it's kind of a change in position. Originally, it was asserted that this was a change in use to the structure. That seems to no longer be the argument. Now we're arguing over whether it's a structure or not. I think there's an argument that challenge perhaps is untimely waived, but regardless, the code, I think, is clear here that this is not a structure that requires a variance in this situation. I want to emphasize, and I'm sure the board is aware, council's probably advised, that because zoning laws are in derogation of the common law and property rights, they're strictly construed against the municipality and in favor of the property owner when there's an ambiguity. And in this case, that would be in favor of the yard guards. And I think that's important to remember as we're looking at these code provisions. Cornell's counsel, Mr. Raplier, has cited to the definition of structure. Any building or thing constructed or erected on the ground or by attachment to something on the ground. So let's go through that. Pool equipment is clearly not a building. I don't think anybody's asserting that it's a building. So then we're talking about a thing. That word right there, I think, is doing a heavy lift here. It's covering a whole host of things. I think there's a lot of ambiguity as to whether this equipment is a thing. Is it a structure? Is equipment a structure? I want to address the issue raised by Mr. Raplier regarding the generator as referenced in our letter. The point is not to suggest that the Cornells have done anything wrong. It's not to suggest that there's a violation on their property. It is to note that according to the town, equipment like a generator, which I would submit is very similar to the type of pool equipment we're talking about now, it did not require, as far as we can tell, a variance from the side yard setback from where it is. And I think Mr. Raplier's evidence demonstrates that. We looked as far as we could. The Yadgards had conversations with the building department, were advised no variance was required. The certificate of compliance that was obtained doesn't make reference to a variance, it makes reference to a building permit. So it seems to us that there's no record of a variance having been issued for that, and the building inspector takes the position today that no variance would have been required at that. We're not suggesting anybody did anything wrong. We're saying, if that's not a structure, why would this be a structure? That's what we're contending here. It's the same type of thing. The concerns about noise and odor, I would also submit very similar concerns for a generator located on a property line. I think those concerns are very overstated here. We've discussed before that the equipment is, the filter and the pump and all are low volume. They're not noisy pieces of equipment. There really are not significant odors to be anticipated from this. So we really think that's overstated. But beyond that, the question is whether or not it's permitted in the code. And that's really not a noise and odor issue. It's whether it's permitted under the code provisions. There was assertion that this is not a storage shed in some way under the code. A storage shed is a structure which is accessory to a residential building and which is used for the storage of household items, equipment, machinery, similar personal property customarily used. Now, I think this definition is important because it clearly draws a distinction between a structure, like a shed, and equipment and machinery. Those are defined, they're used separately. So I think that demonstrates that the code draws a distinction between equipment of this type and a structure. Now, the fact that the assertion that this is not that type of shed because we're not storing residential items, I don't think makes very much sense. First off, this is a pool equipment that's accessory to a residential use structure. That makes this residential in nature. That argument that this is not residential because it's pool equipment, by that argument, then a storage shed like this on somebody's property couldn't be used to store yard equipment because that's not dealing with the residence, that's outside, that's the yard. It couldn't be used for car tires, switching between winter tires and summer, and you want to store them in the shed outside. You can't do it. That's a car. That's not the residence. So it just doesn't make much sense to assert that simply because you're using this for pool equipment, it's not residential. It's clearly residential. And it's important to note that the code doesn't regulate what you put in your shed. That's not what the code is for. It's where you put your shed. It's not what you put into it. So the next part of the definition, on the ground. Pool equipment won't be on the ground. It'll be in the shed. Shed has a floor, so it's inside a structure. It's not being put on the ground. And I think that is an important point. It's inside the structure. That is key here. There's no construction, there's no alteration of an old structure that requires a variance, as Mr. Rapley was asserting. Because there isn't anything that's being done to the pre-existing shed that requires a building permit. And the building inspector has asserted that and demonstrated that we're not going to need a building permit to make any kinds of changes. And we're not saying that a roof makes a difference. We're not saying that if we put it on a pad next to the house and just covered in a roof, suddenly we wouldn't need a variance to put it there. That's not the point. That would be new construction. That would be within the setback. That's different. This is an existing structure. And that makes all the difference here. An existing, non-conforming structure. It's allowed to remain. The Adgards have property rights to continue to use the pre-existing structure. And the fact that it's there is what allows the equipment to be put in there. It's not just because it's a roof that's being added, it's a pre-existing building. Attachment to something on the ground. Mr. Rapley asserted that if you're attaching it inside the shed, that meets the definition here. Now, I would submit that our contractor has indicated it doesn't have to be anchored to the floor. It can just rest inside the shed. So it's not being attached to the shed. But beyond that, I think it's a dangerous proposition to assert that something attached inside a structure can itself therefore be a structure. The zoning law focuses on externals, the external impacts, where you put your building, where you put your shed, not the internals. It doesn't get into, for instance, this is where your bedroom has to be. It has to be on the back side of the house. You can't put the bedroom on the front of the house. It doesn't get into that. It says you put the house here, you have these setbacks, you have these height restrictions. That's what we're focused on, the external. Once you get to the inside, the zoning law, that's not the focus of the zoning law, for important reasons. And as I said, I think it's a dangerous proposition to come to the conclusion that something that is attached inside an existing non-conforming structure would be subject to the setbacks. Nornell's property, their garage and portions of their house are non-conforming. They're within the setback. So would installation of shelving in their garage suddenly be subject to the setback? What about the installation of a washing machine? If they wanted to free up their laundry room and turn it into an office and move their washing machine to their garage, are they prohibited from doing that because it's in the setback and it's attached to the wall through the pipes and all? I think that's a dangerous proposition. It opens the door for disgruntled neighbors to go looking into their neighbor's property to try to find out what are they doing that I can say you can't do that in that part of your house because that part of your house is in the setback and you've attached it to your house. It's now a structure. You can't put that there. That's not what we are supposed to be doing. That's not what the code has in mind. The code very clearly is looking at the exterior. Because this equipment is going inside an existing structure that doesn't have to be enlarged or changed in a way that it extends the nonconformity, it's not a structure under the code. And it's consistent with what the town has done in the past. And I don't think this question was previously raised because I do think those minutes are a little unclear, but clearly the discussion of the variance was in relation to putting it onto the side of the house, needing variances for a pad exterior to a building, to a structure. Planting plan, I'll be very brief with it. First off, I think it's a little questionable whether a formal plan was required. This is not site plan approval. The code says this is to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator. That was also the language of the variance. And I also wonder whether the building permit really was needed for the planting. Building permit was issued for the pool equipment, for the fence. I'm not sure that the building permit itself, which is what is being appealed here, addressed the planting. obviously, we're not questioning planting is required. That's, there's no dispute about that. And the zoning administrator at the end of this will have to confirm that the plantings are done to block the view, and make a determination on that at that point. But, whether the building permit itself covers the planting and whether a plan was needed with any certain specificity, I think is a little questionable. But beyond that, we have provided these plans, multiple plans. This plan, it sets forth the three species that we are anticipating. This was discussed with a gardener who recommended species. 3 species were identified. We gave you the details of what those are. It notes that we're estimating 15 to 20. We have to address spacing for full maturity. That's what you have to do when you plant. We have to also address the visual concerns at the same time. Where are there gaps? Which is hard to do on a precise, plan, a two-dimensional plan as opposed to being there. But we provided the plants 5 to 10 feet in width, 6 to 20 feet in height. These are going to be, 15 to 20 of them. Quite frankly, I would say this is perhaps even overkill, given the amount of existing foliage and plantings that are there. This is going to block the view of a pool from the neighboring properties. I think the zoning administrator's comfort with it is reasonable, should be upheld, and the zoning administrator should be trusted to ensure that the plantings that go in do in fact block the view for the neighboring properties. I think I covered everything that was in the letter there, and then some.
Yep.
So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise,
I don't-
Question. Precisely, and I don't know if this has been submitted, can you tell us precisely what equipment is proposed to go in the shed?
yeah,
I think you might have had it in front of you. I'm sure it was submitted.
there is a heater. I printed these off today, if you'd like them for the record. There is a pump, and there's a heater, and I believe there's a filter that goes in between the pump and the heater.
Can I take it? Maybe I'll make sure that this is what's going in.
Yes, I think those are the documentation for equipment. At least for the heater, it covers a series of them. I don't know the specific version, but it provides the information regarding.
All right, and so it's a pump, it's a heater, and it's a filter.
Yes.
And what's and it's being powered by?
So the pump is electric, and then the heater is natural gas.
Okay. The pump's electric and the heater's natural gas. And is there electric going to the shed now? I don't know what that means, kind of.
There's no electric on
I
this.
have a wire going there.
So what's the proposal to power the, you said what needs electric? The pump?
The pump.
And what's the plan to power the pump?
I believe that the plan is to install electric and the water lines and the gas all underground.
Be a propane tank underground?
Is it already existing, or does it need to be in? Need to be installed. Yeah. it'll be
Okay.
underground.
What was his answer?
It'll be underground, installed underground.
And a propane tank to be installed underground.
This is just how are you gonna get the propane to the propane tank if it's past the plantings?
No, I would have to defer to Mr. Yagard on the precise location that the pipe, the underground tank will be placed. It'll be
Okay.
placed, I believe, on the back,
Yeah,
closer to
you have the driveway
the-
that goes back around.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
that's
idea
right.
was kind of beside the driveway on that path up top, underground, and everything would be
Yeah,
back underground.
okay.
Question I have, the heater. Approximately how much would that be required to run? You know, when you're heating the pool?
That I don't know the specifics on
I
that.
mean, they're not gonna have the pool open, let's say, after Labor Day.
No, it's, can I talk? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's a secondary home where they're on weekends. They'll go on in the morning, they'll heat up the pool, it'll click off, and usually with the summers we have here,
Probably Memorial Day to Labor Day, something like that?
yeah, but we don't even, we had a house with a pool before, like, it's on, you know, literally in the morning, just to get it up to temperature, and then the sun does the rest of the job, and it kind of clicks off. Yeah, and you can look it up, the filter and the pump are the quietest on the market.
Okay.
And putting them in a shed is like, it's a complete another level of, you won't hear it from standing beside it.
Right. And it's not gonna be operating like anybody here in this part of the world. They're not using their pool post Labor Day and again up until Memorial Day.
No.
All right.
And
So
again,
4 months.
Again, it's like weekends, and it's not 7 days a week. It's-
Okay.
it's-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Anything else?
Yep.
A little confusing because when the ZBA was discussing, thank you by the way, this with the Mr. Yadgard in 2022, the first page says, Chairman Parisi summarized, there is currently a buried propane tank from the back property line, so there must be a tank there already. And the mechanicals for the pump and filter are in the corner. I think they were proposed, if not in the shed, very close to the shed in 2022. I talked to, when I spoke earlier, I indicated that the planting plan, which you folks have all seen, that there are no evergreens between the Cornells and the shed. That's a picture of what it looks like. And the reason I'm showing you is
Is that the shed on the Yadigards?
there are two sheds, Frank. This is the one where they're proposing to put the equipment.
Okay.
It's further. But the point is, the planting plan has plants that are just not there. And while they are on the other side of the shed, it's just not accurate. There's statements, there's presentations to the board that are just not accurate. There's screening that just doesn't exist, that's on a planting plan. And I agree with Mr. Demarest about interpreting the code and using the plain language, and I think when you do that, the only result you can reach is that these do need variances. So I'm not gonna go through the code, but any building or thing, well, this is a thing, these are things. It's inescapable that these are things. They're not buildings, I get that. They're placed on an attachment to the ground. These are not debatable points. And if he wants to put the pool equipment in his house, I guarantee you we won't object. The comment that if you put a washing machine, this is a different use for a different structure. That's what's being proposed. And sort of fear-mongering about, well, if you do this, then the next person won't be able to move their washing machine and stuff like that. It's just not, it's not what's before the board. Regarding the Cornell's generator, I don't know that there isn't a variance because you couldn't find it. That's why I went up to town hall. I'm not prepared to say, I'm not gonna speak for Jonathan Ialongo, as has happened a couple times tonight, well, the building inspector said this. Jonathan Ialongo didn't say those things to me. I came up to see if there was a variance. The point is that it was granted all legal approvals that it needed in 2018, 3 years before the Cornells bought. And if it needed a variance, then it still needs a variance. A building permit was issued for it, it was installed. If there's something, if the town says we've done something wrong, then enforce the law. But that's what we're asking the town to do here, is that our perception of the law seems to me is pretty clear. This is a thing, and it's being attached to something. And the further you get from how many months is it gonna be on, and how will that impact, That's the slippery slope. Just apply the law as it's written. There was also a statement about it was originally planned in the shed. It was, again, that is not accurate. What happened, and I refer to the minutes from the meeting in 2025 where Mr. Rettle was speaking, Chairman Rettle was speaking, and what was said to the board was, and to us as well, the applicant, and I'm reading from the transcript, the applicant was looking for a variance for the side yard for the pool equipment next to his house. And in order to mitigate what he was looking for, mitigate, make less, he withdrew this variance request. The point is, no one, that meeting in 2022, no public members had notice of. We weren't here. When there was a complaint about how close that stuff was to their home, and it was maybe 60 feet at the time, they withdrew it. They didn't say again, oh, by the way, we don't need any approvals. That's not what happened. So while it's been suggested that, oh, the Jaguars just want their pool, and they've waited so long, and they've done everything in good faith, a lot of this is pulling teeth, because if you recall, how we started here was, when the building permit was issued, that equipment was back next to the side of the house. There was no application for it. That's where it was proposed. Even though the board and the chair aptly said, it's been withdrawn. And we said, whoa, hold on a second. This stuff has reappeared. The stuff that you agreed was withdrawn. Nope, it's not reappeared. We're gonna stick it in the shed. We're gonna put it even closer. So, with all due respect to the Yadgards, this is entirely their doing. We wanted appropriate plantings. You asked a month ago. You got the plan today or yesterday? No one really had time to review it. So we've commented, yes, it's a great improvement. The other comment I've made is, in that plan, there are trees that don't exist. And I just showed you that. And in terms of the mechanicals, again, you have not heard, this hearing has been open, I think this is the third month, any reason for why you can't put them elsewhere, outside a setback, other than just, we want them where we want them. And we showed you tonight, they're much, much closer to the Cornells, and the Cornells, the big bad Cornells. Look, just move them, and moot the whole issue. Anybody, to be frank, that it would be a good solution to solving this problem. But if the board is going to follow the law, I humbly submit, these require a variance. You shouldn't get into how many months are stuff on. Mr. Barnett pointed out, and he's correct, apparently there's a tank in the ground. That's what John Parisi said in 2022. I don't know where it is. There's going to be trenching to put water, electric, and propane. And it might be the quietest on the market, but anybody that's ever run a pool is, it's not going to be nothing. It's going to emit exhaust. There's been no debate about that. We've showed you before in prior meetings, it's going to be vented. It's going to go somewhere. This is why people put this stuff outside, because it's safer outside, and it doesn't need to be vented. But this could all be resolved by just putting it somewhere else on this 1.7 or 9 acres. And then there's not a problem. And then Mr. Yadgar has his pool. Thank you.
Thanks. Come on up.
What I'm gonna do is, why don't we, I'm gonna give this stuff to you, so this way,
We can keep that and make it part of the record?
yeah, make it part of the record. That would be awesome.
That's actually part of the record already in the initial proceeding copy.
Yeah, I know.
If it's the same stuff.
Yep.
Just want to briefly, did you have,
No, we're all set. Go ahead.
just wanted to briefly address a few things.
Okay.
There was a comment, I think it was different use for a different structure, and trying to draw a distinction between putting a washing machine in the garage from the pool equipment in the shed. Under the code, my point is, washing machine and the pool equipment are both equipment. They're equivalent and they're both things. Shed and a non-conforming garage are both structures and they're both non-conforming. The code doesn't draw a distinction there. So if you're going to say that this is a structure because it's pool equipment being attached to or put inside a shed, the same logic would have to apply to a washing machine put into a non-conforming garage. And that just doesn't, I think everybody can recognize how it doesn't make sense about the washing machine in the garage, but under the law, same rules apply for the pool equipment in the shed. The planting plan, yes, you received that today or yesterday. The reason for that is we wanted to make sure it was submitted to Mr. Ialongo first, so that we didn't have an issue of a question as to whether or not he had had an opportunity to review and approve. We got his approval, and then we submitted as soon as we knew the approval, or approximately around that. So, that's why that came in. We wanted to make sure we dotted the i's and crossed the t's with his approval for you. Why not put it somewhere else? I think you can see from the diagrams of the property that with the setbacks, there's not a whole lot of room here. It might look like a lot of space, but with the setbacks, the pool needed a variance from setbacks. So there's just not a lot of space there to move it somewhere where a variance wouldn't be needed. That's why the shed was identified, and it was put in. And then the last thing, trenching, we mentioned that, discussed that at a prior meeting. Underground trenching in setbacks is permitted. It doesn't require a variance to do that. So that's not really, I think, an issue before the board in order to run the necessary utilities to the shed. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My personal opinion is, I think we've heard enough. I think maybe at this point we can close the public hearing.
There's nobody else here that wants to speak?
Yeah. I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Discussion.
Here's, when we talk about, equipment and noise, first and foremost, if you, just as carefully to my ability to read through our code, when you talk about accessory structures, it's really not that specific whether or not you use it both to store your garden tools or that you have some type of apparatus to assist your house.
Right.
I mean, you could put a water softener out there too, just for the heck of it, and run your pipes out to it and come back and you wouldn't hear it. Also, you could choose to use the shed to get up every morning, the moment, at 9:30 every morning, and decide to put a radial arm saw in there and cut wood every morning. And that would make a lot more noise than a pool pump. Yet that wouldn't require a variance.
Right.
So when I look at the vagary of our code, that doesn't really say, from what I gather, do not see how having pool equipment and a heater in there would make that much of a difference to
I don't
anything
either.
else.
I don't either. You know what I found interesting? And there was an allegation that there may have been a violation on Cornell's property because of a generator, and Mr. Rappley proved that it's got a CO. There's no problem there. But what's interesting is, don't those generators have to self-check once a week? They have to run? They produce noise and exhaust?
It's once a month.
Just once a week, I think. No?
Those
It's once a
the
month.
Generac ones?
Yeah. I
They
had a
do- they do-
Generac,
they do
and
test.
I had to do it once a week.
Yeah.
But they produce noise and exhaust. But that's besides the point. Going to the landscaping, I was looking back at the original resolution, and what we did is we entrusted the building inspector to review landscaping so that it reasonably screened the pool. And with this new landscaping plan they gave us, they identified what plants are going to be there, the mature height, the number of plants. I think this new landscaping plan certainly is reasonable that the building inspector approved. He reviewed it, he thinks it's reasonable. I
Yeah,
can't
think
say
we
he's
can-
wrong.
I don't think we can speak to the accuracy of what's there, but we can hold them to the accuracy of what they're proposing to plant.
In other words, say you need this number of plants, is that what you're talking about?
They're showing a number of plants.
Oh, yeah, Yeah,
So, you know, I'm just responding to.
They shouldn't
to
deviate from
Alan's
this.
Concerns, you know, that it's not accurate. We can hold them to the accuracy of what they're proposing.
What that
which
plan
what
is.
I would suggest, yeah.
no, you're right, Ann.
I have a little bit different take on this
Shed?
whole shed, yeah. And because I was looking at the definition of a storage shed, which is what this currently is. Doesn't have any equipment in it. And I was really trying to, the code, you know, basically says equipment, machinery, and similar personal property customarily used for, owned by homeowners.
Yep.
So I went back to the dictionary to look up storage.
Oh.
What constitutes storage? And what constitutes storage seems to be things that are temporary in nature, that you go to pull those things out. And I'll read the definition. It says, a source from which things may be drawn as needed, a reserve fund, or something that is stored or kept for future use. And I think just to me, the spirit of a storage shed is that you're putting in there things that get pulled out for their use. So to me, this is no longer a storage shed, it's a mechanical room. And that's how I look at this, is are we now required, because it's a mechanical room, to require a variance to put the equipment in that?
I follow you.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was. I don't think it's so much of a rear or side setback issue as a
Use.
usage variance. That's kind of where I'm cut up. But I also don't know if it's for us to have to monitor every single shed in the town. You know, anytime somebody, although I think if someone did put a washer and dryer in there, you're gonna have to hook it up to a septic and, so that's gonna be a problem in itself, but I don't think that's what, you know, he intended, but that's kind of where I'm hung up, but I'm also thinking that, hey, this is a pool heater and filter. I've been by them. I've, you know, been to pools before. I don't think they're loud or obnoxious or obtrusive. I've never smelled fumes coming off of them. So I think it's probably reasonable, but there's some, I don't know where that balance is between what changes your shed into something that you need a usage variance. I don't know if pool equipment is it.
Well, I think it's
On
just
that measure.
the change of a use, is you don't,
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
yeah, I mean, it's not, to me, it's not whether it's pool equipment or, you know, anything else, it's, we're changing the use.
But as
So
far-
my
yeah.
question is, do we need, in a change of use, to require a variance?
No, that's the question,
But-
is it a change of use?
Right.
But as far as the planting issue, the trees and whatnot, I agree, we just defer to Ialongo.
Yep.
We already decided that.
Yeah,
so
I
I
think
don't know if we should talk about
He's
that.
approved it. I
Yeah.
think, my personal opinion
That's
is, I
fine.
think we can adopt his opinion on that.
Yeah, and I think the yard guards are reasonable. They keep adding trees. It seems sufficient and more than most neighbors would probably do. And yes, if there's a twig in the back not covering one of the sheds, you know, I guess they could take that up down the road.
Where do you
But,
sit on this, Alex?
So I think along the lines with Ann, in regards to changing it and being a shed now and in the definition, even mechanicals and equipment, I would think lawnmowers. I would think that when it refers to a shed and the definition. And yeah, I'm hung up in regards to the variance issue, but I do think I'm more stuck on the ability to not just move it somewhere else and solve that problem completely. But that's not obviously
Yeah, that's not
what we're
before
here
us.
for. No, and so yeah.
All right. I think it's okay for the pool equipment to be in there, that's where I sit.
I concur with the chair, you know, so.
My suggestion is, why don't we adjourn this to next month for resolution? there's a couple of things I want to think about. I think we may need a legal opinion from Kyle on a couple of things that are floating in my mind. It may make a difference how I feel or how you feel. So I would make a motion that we adjourn this to our April meeting for decision. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I agree.
I want to review this too. I want to review the original appeal papers that Mr. Rapplier submitted too. I want to review those again.
Yeah, I also would like to give the Cornells a chance to look at the planting plan and just, it
Well,
would be nice if they could
is-
weigh in and,
No, we've closed the public hearing.
Public hearing's closed.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, they're not weighing in.
Yeah, otherwise, we'll be doing this in December. Every time we raise one thing, somebody else says
Yeah,
something
I'm
else.
just hoping at some point they can agree to agree.
Well,
That's not gonna happen.
that's a point.
Response to that would be if the equipment got moved, we have an agreement. But
Well, we got a motion on the floor to adjourn for decision. Anybody else feel that way? Anybody want to second it, or what are we going to do?
I will second that.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion carried.
when is your date, Frank?
I don't know, look, I think it's around the
April
21st, I
This is
think.
the-
April 21st.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kyle, if you got a couple of minutes, could you, can we go into an attorney-client session with you before we adjourn the meeting?
Absolutely.
Guess we're all done.
Drone.
Yeah. Yeah, after we're done with Kyle, we'll just adjourn the meeting. There won't be any further discussion on it.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Everybody have a happy St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, I guess they're having fun at
I have to tell you, I made my